Howdy, howdy, this is Mr. Potter. Easter's coming up, and we just had the vernal equinox recently, and so that's a great time to talk about how Easter occurs, where Easter comes up on the calendar, why it comes up where it does in the calendar, why it fluctuates so much, where the vernal equinox comes from, why the first day of spring is where it is, and all sorts of other conundrums that have to do with our current calendar. But in order to understand these changes to the calendar that have happened over the past 2,000 years, we really need to understand the concept of lunar months and sidereal years. So, of course, we have an Earth, and we have a sun, and we have a moon. And the idea is that the moon orbits the Earth, and it orbits the Earth every 29.53 days. This is a lunar month. This is how long it takes for the moon to completely go around the Earth. And then, of course, the Earth travels around the sun. It actually travels around the sun in an ellipse with the sun at one focus. And it takes 365.2422 days to do this. And the problem is that it doesn't take an integer number of days. The fact that we have this 0.53 or this 0.2422 is a problem for us because it means that days and years don't line up perfectly, which means we're always going to have some type of drift. We're going to have some way where the calendar is not going to be firm in one place. Not going to be predictable, and it's going to cause problems. Now, this was a problem for the Romans. So the Romans had this idea of a calendar that accounted for that. They had an alternating series of 31 days followed by 29 days. Martius, Aprilius, Maenius, Unius, Quintilis, Sextilis, Septembers. As a matter of fact, notice you've got the sex for 6, you've got sept for 7, you've got oct for 8, because these are the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th months. The Roman calendar actually started with Martius as its first month, and that's why October is the 10th month in our calendar. It was the 8th month in the Roman calendar. That's why Oct comes in. That's why Dec comes in as the 10th month, even though it's really our 12th month. And what happened is every few years we would have an extra month thrown in called intercalaris. And this intercalaris month would occur and it would have 28 days. But it would only happen 11 of 24 years. In other words, every 3 or 4 years, depending on how things worked out, we would have an intercalaris month. And Februarius, the last month of the year, would be shut down by 5 days. And what happened is that meant that some of our years would have 355 days. Some of our years would have 378 days. But there wasn't a firm pattern as to why one year would be an intercalaris year and one wouldn't be. The Roman Senate would decide today was going to be an intercalaris year because we love our emperor and we want him to be in control of the Senate for a longer period of time, or we really don't like this senator and we're going to have him be emperor for a shorter period of time. And so this 11 out of 24 years, this actually was fairly political, and it caused the calendar to drift quite a bit. And of course, Julius Caesar came along and he said, you know what, we're having enough of this. We're going to make some changes to it so that things are predictable. Because this first day of March, which is called the Ides, this first day of the month, the Ides of March, the Ides of April, that really needs to be on the same day of the year. And in Martius, the month of Martius, it was on the 15th. As a matter of fact, all of these days that had 31, the Ides was going to be on the 15th of that day. That was the first day of the year, or the first day of that month. The rest of them were going to start on the 13th, the ones that ended in 29 or 28. So the whole idea about the 15th of March being the beginning of the year was really nice because the 15th of March was the first day of spring. It was a wonderful time to start planting. And the idea was that we can use the calendar to tell us when it's time to plant our crops. That was the whole idea behind this. But all these intercalaris months that we'd had really messed up that system, because all these extra politicians who wanted extra days for their senators to be in charge, extra days for the emperor to be in charge, had really moved the first day of the year off of the first day of spring, which it really needed to be for an agrarian society. So Julius Caesar came on and he said, you know what, I'm going to fix this calendar. And so instead of making it alternating 31 and 29 days, he made Aprilius have 30 days. He made Junius have 30 days. He made Sextilis have 30 days. He made September have 30 days. November had 30 days. And to keep this pattern, this 31 and 30, this alternating pattern, December is going to have 31 days. And we've got some extra days here, so let's let Janarius have 31 days. And Februarius, well, all these extra intercalaris days, intercalaris is gone. We're going to have these extra days come over here, and so now Februarius is going to be 29 days on the leap year. And it's always going to be 1 out of 4 years. And this time, we mean it. None of this political, you can change it a little bit if you want. No, it's always going to be once every 4 years. And that's great. As a matter of fact, it was so great that he decided, you know what, I'm going to take this quintilis and I'm going to change it to Julius. I'm going to name the month after me. This nice 31-day month. Great. And what's nice about this is that our month, because of this 1 out of every 4 years, it's going to be 365 for 3 of those days, but 366 on the other one. So it's really 365.25. That's nice. That 25 is real close to that 0.2422 we talked about at the beginning of the video. That sidereal year. It's really close. We're only off by 1 day every 128 years. Well, this is really nice. And of course, later on, someone else is going to have to fix this. But we're the Roman Empire, and what we do becomes the law of the land. And this is great. Except, of course, things don't change. And our vernal equinox tends to drift. So what happened is, by the time 44 BC, March 25th is now the first day of spring. And Julius Caesar just said, okay, this is going to be the first day of spring, March 25th. Deal with it. But by the time 325 AD came around, it's March 21. And this is important because this is when the Council of Nicaea decided to come up with the date of Easter. Now, Easter is defined to be the first Sunday after the first full moon after the first day of spring. Or actually, not the first day of spring, but the vernal equinox. And of course, it's based on when Palm Sunday was in the old Jewish tradition. So we're doing the same idea. But what's happening is, as this vernal equinox changes, so does the first day of Easter. And for a religion, it's not nice for the rules to be changing and for us to not really know when is this really supposed to happen. Well, this really came to a head in 1582. In 1582, we're at March 11th. March 11th is the first day of spring. Oh my goodness. The first day of spring is actually went before the first day of the year, because the first day of the year is supposed to be March 15th. Well, this is a problem. And so what's going to happen is Pope Gregory the 13th is going to fix Easter. And of course, the idea here is we're going to fix Easter and we're going to change the calendar in order to fix Easter. So here's the plan. Right now, this is the way our calendar looks at. We've got this alternating series of 31 days and 30 days. Emperor Augustus has decided to name a month after him, and he's kind of stolen a day from Februarius. But what we need to do is we need to make some changes. What we had done, the old Julian calendar, said that we had one leap year every 4 years. And this gives us 365.25. Remember that our sidereal year was 365.2422, which means this is too much. So what we need to do is we need to find some way to bring this 0.25 down, and what we're going to do is instead of having 100 leap years every 400 years, what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're going to say we're only going to have 97 leap years every 400 years. So this is the first big change. The first big change is that leap years aren't going to happen every 4 years. Instead, they're going to happen every 4 years, except divisible by 100, except divisible by 400. And the idea was these years that were divisible by 100, we're going to get rid of almost all of those leap years. We're going to get rid of 3 of them. But we're going to keep the ones that are divisible by 400. So the idea is that 1600 is going to be a leap year. 1700? No. 1800? No. 1900? Yeah. 2000 or 2000? Excuse me, 1900? No. 2000? Yeah. 2100? No. The idea is that only these years that are divisible by 400 get to keep their leap years. The ones that are not divisible by 400 but are divisible by 100, they lose theirs. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take January and February and we're going to make them the beginning of the year. So now they are actually at the beginning of the year. It's January, then February, then March through December. And we're going to make this change on the 4th of October, 1582, which means the next day, tomorrow, is going to be the 15th of October, 1582. And because Pope Gregory was in charge of all of the Catholic religion, all of the Catholic nations made this change. But all of the Protestant nations and all of the other nations that didn't follow Christianity did not make this change, which means now we've got all of these countries changing the dates at which they adopt this calendar at different times. So keep in mind that the Catholic countries, so we're talking about Spain, we're talking about Portugal, we're talking about the New World, all of these countries made that change on the 4th of October, 1582. And that means that their tomorrow was the 15th of October, 1582. But if you take a look at the UK and what would become the United States, they don't make this change until 1752. Well, here, this was an 11-day change. Now, the 2nd of September is followed by the 14th of September, 1752. In other words, now we're talking about 13 days. And if you take a look at other countries would make the change later, meaning that they had more changes to adopt. As a matter of fact, Turkey, which is one of the later Western countries to actually adopt this because they are predominantly a Muslim nation, made this change on the 18th of December, 1926. And they basically said, you know what? It's New Year, January of 1927. In other words, they actually end up gaining, 14 days, 13 days? So the change that happens comes slowly. But eventually, almost every Western nation adopts this calendar. There's only a few nations that don't have this calendar. And it's mostly because they are not part of the Judeo-Christian Muslim faiths. And our calendar is still off. Keep in mind that Julius Caesar's was 365.25, which means we're off 128 days. Every 128 days we lose a day. The Gregorian was 365.2425, which means this Gregorian calendar is still going to gain time. It's still not our 365.2422 days, which means every 3,030 days, we're going to gain a day. Every 3,030 years, we're going to gain a day. Well, that's a problem for some other culture. That's a problem for some other time. Somewhere in the year 5000, they're going to have to solve this. Once again, this is Mr. Potter. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.